Good morning. We are team number 1, and the title of our study is Has the Police from Hermosillo Taking Care Against COVID-19? And my teammates are Gabriel, Naomi, Yvonne, and Nico.
The general objective will be to analyze if the population of Hermosillo in a range of 15 to 60 years of age in a medium to high social class is taking care of themselves against COVID. This objective will be achieved by making surveys and analyzing the answers to the question with the purpose of knowing the regulations they use to take care.
There are multiple ways in which it can be transmitted. The first one is contact and droplet transmission, which is the most common one. This is through direct or close contact with an infected person, and it can be transmitted through secretions like talking, coughing, and sneezing. Then there's the fomite transmission, which is by contaminating surfaces and objects, and in which an non-infected person touches and then get infected. And the airborne transmission is spread by air and is caused by the dissemination of droplet nuclei that remain infections through suspended and over long distances in time. An example of this one is of spaces or enclosed spaces that have inadequate ventilation system.
There are several symptoms to COVID-19, the most common being a fatigue, dry cough, and a fever. The less common symptoms are headache, a loss of taste or smell, a sore throat, nausea or vomiting, diarrhea, nasal congestion, and conjunctivitis. Now, the severe COVID-19 symptoms are the shortness of breath, confusion, a pain or pressure in the chest, and a loss of appetite.
Hermosillo follows some guidelines. It's called the Sanitary Protocol Technical Guidelines for Sanitary Security. This has been followed since March. There are some steps that Hermosillo has to follow, some rules, and here I'm gonna mention 5 from 10 of the most important ones. First, the population mobility must prioritize essential activities. An essential activity would be going to a hospital, to a medical appointment, to the supermarket, or stuff like that. The second one, in-person massive events of any nature cannot be done. This means that concerts, parties, church, all of them cannot be done because a lot of people would be involved. The third one, classes of all school levels must continue virtually. Since March, they have been virtually and will continue till we have a green light. Public transportation must be sanitized when with only 50% of its capacity, meaning that public buses have to be with 50% of its capacity and also be sanitized every time people get in or get out. 5. All businesses, whether with essential or not activities, must apply the appropriate sanitary protocols. If they do not, they have to be closed or they have a punishment.
State records and reported cases. In the state of Sonora, up to the date of January 28, there have been approximately 18,670 new cases, summing up a total of 62,147 confirmed cases, with a result of 5,234 deaths. And as we can see on the graphs below, the total amount of cases for Mexico is 1.83 million, from which 1.38 million have been recovered and 155,000 have been reported dead.
Introduction and justification. As we all know, COVID-19 has been a life-altering situation that has been spreading since March of last year in several countries. Therefore, we intend to research if the population specifically from Hermosillo, has been taking the correct precautions. More specifically, we seek to raise awareness on the aforementioned issue in order to encourage people to follow the measurements established by the State Health Department and also previously mentioned in the guidelines.
Some additional information that needs to be known about COVID-19 is that it is an infectious disease caused by a newly discovered coronavirus, and that people infected with this disease will mostly experience a moderate respiratory illness, and older people, specifically those with medical problems such as cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, and cancer, are the most likely to develop a serious illness. Also, as previously mentioned, COVID-19 spreads through droplets of saliva or nose discharge when a person coughs or sneezes. Therefore, the importance of coughing into a flexed elbow.
One of the studies that we researched was the lockdown relaxation and acne period in COVID-19, in which in this study, they developed a mathematical model where they evaluate the impact that the population of Hermosillo had. And they compare this with some hypothetical ones. They did a Monte Carlo study in which they performed scenarios going to be explained more detail in the next slide. And the results showed that a hypothetical delay of 2 weeks, a lockdown measure will result in early acne around May 9 for the hospitalization prevalence and an increase on cumulative deaths, 42 times higher by May 31st when compared to baseline. It is important to mention that the 2 weeks that we remain in lockdown, it helped to decrease the number of acne cases because in that way, all the population was not infected at once. It made not as soon and not as sudden. These are some of the histories of the different epidemic curves in which they have 3 scenarios each. The first one, A, represents the acme of daily new reported cases, B represents the acme of daily hospitalizations, and C represents the acme of daily deaths. They also represented in a flow diagram, in which protected individuals means it represents P, and PR represents the released population, while S, E, I, A, I, S, H, Q, R, and D represent the populations which are susceptible, exposed, asymptomatically infected, hospitalized, quarantined, recovered, and dead. The flow diagram represents like the process which a population goes through during the pandemic.
Another study we found was one realized by el Colegio de la Frontera Norte, Colegio de Sonora, and Grupo Interinstitucional de Investigación. And their study focused on researching the consequences that the sanitary guidelines have had on the businesses present in the state of Sonora. The study consisted in drafting up surveys and handing them to said businesses. And the study was conducted from the 1st of May to the 30th of May. It is important to mention that the cities that participated were Hermosillo, Nogales, and Guaymas. The study showed that 41.6% of businesses had been forced to fire employees due to the pandemic, whilst another 32.88% was planning on doing so. In addition to that, it was reported that 34% of businesses suffered a loss of income of between 21 to 40%, whilst another 26.3% said they suffered losses of 41 to 60%. Finally, 53.1% of businesses said they required financial aid to survive.
The research question we formulated is, has the population of Hermosillo taken care against COVID-19? And our hypothesis to answer our research question is, due to the increasing number of cases, more than 17% of the population of Hermosillo hasn't followed all the sanitary recommendations. This 17% was retrieved from another study that said that around 17% of the population has been infected with COVID-19. Here are the references. Thank you.